Our next guest is out with a new book this morning. It's titled Life After Power. It's fascinating. 7 presidents and their search for purpose beyond the White House. Joining us right now is Jared Cohen. He's the author of 5 bestsellers. He founded and ran a unit within Alphabet called Jigsaw. Before that, he worked in the State Department, was an early advocate of Twitter as a tool for diplomacy. Today, he's the president of global affairs at Goldman Sachs. And this is a fascinating book, Jared, because you take a look at usually people take a look at what happened during people's presidency. This is actually so much about what happens after. And I want to talk to you about the book. I also am hoping you can maybe put some of this in today's context, not just about presidents, but, you know, we have so many CEOs who come on who are thinking about what's supposed to happen afterwards. People don't spend a lot of time thinking about the afterwards part.
No, and look, this elusive question of what do you do next after you've accomplished what's supposed to be the most significant thing in your life, it's a very persistent and difficult question that we have to ask throughout our entire lives. I think CEOs have a lot in common with ex-presidents. You know, Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, pondered the question of if it's a good idea to have half a dozen men who'd risen to the presidency wandering around the rest of us like discontented ghosts. And I think that, more than 200 years later, we kind of have an answer to that question, which is successors can either be a tremendous partner, or ex-presidents can either be a tremendous partner to their successors, or they can be a bipartisan nuisance.
Okay, so of the presidents that you feel like you studied in this, which ones do you think really excelled afterwards, and which ones really failed and why?
Look, they all had one thing in common, which is they had something they were tremendously principled about. The problem is in the post-presidency, you get stuck in the past. You want to settle old scores. You get kind of bogged down in vanity. The one that spoke to me the most was John Quincy Adams, because he goes on to serve 9 terms in the House of Representatives. And in this much lower station, he kind of wanders around, doesn't know what he's going to do, but he becomes passionate about the right to petition. And as they try to gag him from reading petitions about abolitionism, he finds that in a much lower station, he achieves a much higher calling, and he mainstreams what at the time was a very fringe and radical abolitionist movement.
So I read this part of the book, and the question that I had actually about him is there any part of you that says that he should have just walked away? He should have stepped away, that the reason he was there was because he just couldn't give up. Even though he was at a lower station, he couldn't give up the power of being in Washington, being at the center of it all.
Look, presidents don't like giving up power. Look at our 2024 election here. This is going to be likely the first and only time since 1892 that you have a rematch between 2 presidents of the United States as the nominees of the 2 major parties, right? Why? You have the 2 oldest candidates in history eclipsed only by themselves 4 years ago. You have 2 presidents that don't want to give up power. It's been persistent. Of the 45 men who served as president 46 times, minus the ones who died in office, it's hard to let go, right? It's hard to imagine how do you top that last thing that you did?